Seduction of my wife by an ex-boyfriend. Cassie and I were married for 5 years and dated for about 5 years before our wedding. I guess you could say we've been in love since we were kids. I had been with a few girls before I went with Cassie, but she had only been with one guy as far as I knew. With our marriage, everything was going according to plan. We both worked and saved enough money to start looking for our first home. Then would come the kids. My career as a structural engineer was going well, and Cassie was planning to stay home once the kids came. Cassie was as pretty as the day we saw each other. She had shoulder-length brown hair and long, bushy bangs that went down to her eyes. Her dark eyes sparkled when she laughed. She was only 5'3", but she seemed taller because of the way she held herself. She had well-defined hips and a nice waist. I myself was slightly average, nothing to speak of at all. I stood under 6 feet and under 200 pounds. The best thing about me was that I still had hair. I jogged at least 3 times a week, so I was in good shape. The sex was great. We had tried almost everything over the years and openly discussed what each of us liked and didn't like. I was pleased with her behavior and assumed she agreed with mine. Life was good. The future was bright. It was bright until we talked at night. Usually, when we went to bed, we did one of 2 things. We had sex or we went to bed. We never lay in bed with the lights off or discussed any personal issues. It was a routine we both seemed comfortable with. Now I know why it was a good policy. John, can we talk about something? What? Now? Can't it wait until tomorrow? She was silent for a minute. John, Clayton Brenner's here for a few days. Would you mind if I saw him while he's here? She had my attention. Clayton Brenner was the only guy Cassie had sex with besides me. When we were in high school, he was a real cat dog. His family had money, and Clayton always dressed well and drove a fancy car, while the other guys tried to keep our trash heaps running. All the girls were drawn to him, and he had a choice. He would go with one for a few weeks, and then dump her and take another. The girls knew what he was doing, but still thought they were the special ones. Unfortunately, Cassie was one of the ones he used and dumped. He used to brag about his victories to the other guys, who I discovered were very low class. He was also considered pretty good in bed, and as far as I know, none of the girls ever complained about his behavior, including Cassie. Why are you asking me this now? I just don't want to do anything that you might not want to do. Where? At the Deska Inn. Cassie, Clayton Brenner is a very unsympathetic man. I know, but we were friends in high school. Cassie, you weren't his friend. You were a notch on his belt. She didn't say anything, and the pause became unbearable. When did he call you? Yesterday. Why are you telling me this now? Another moment of silence followed, longer than the first. I'm not going to comment on either. You do what you want to do. Let your conscience be the guide. I've always wanted to say that. I rolled over onto my side, turning away from her. It was quiet for a while, and then I heard her crying quietly into her pillow. It was something she'd never done before. I lay perfectly still so she wouldn't notice that I was still awake. She whimpered to herself for a long time and finally fell asleep. It was the longest night of my life. Why would she cry over my refusal to condone her seeing her ex-boyfriend? Why had she waited all day to tell me he was in town? Why was he calling her in the first place? Our conversation was short and not emotional enough to bring her to tears. I was missing something. There was something I didn't understand. I tossed and turned all night trying to figure it out. Of course, there was a simple solution to my dilemma. All I had to do was ask her. Had she already seen him? Why does she want to see him? Is she really going to have sex with him? Had she already had sex with him? I was driving myself crazy. I knew I couldn't ask her any of those questions. Everything I would learn would be drawn from the information she would give me of her own free will, without me asking. I felt this strongly and was determined not to give in to the easy way out. If she told me, that would be fine. But I didn't ask. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 5 in the morning. I got out of bed and quietly went to the bathroom to relieve myself. I was still thinking. I tried a few mental tricks to stop it, but nothing worked. Before I left the bathroom, I looked at the hamper. I slowly lifted the lid and looked inside. After shifting a few things on top, I found a pair of black silk panties and a black push-up bra. They were special occasion underwear. She wore them for birthdays, anniversaries, and other holidays that were cause for celebration. Special lingerie always meant special sex. Yesterday wasn't special. We didn't have special sex. I didn't even see her in lingerie. All I knew for sure was that she had worn her black silk panties that day, and I had to assume that she had put them on so someone could admire her in them. I carefully placed the bra and panties on the dressing table by the sink. Trying not to make any noise, I got dressed and left the house. The Waffle House was always open. As I sat sipping my third cup of coffee, my mind was racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I pushed my plate of uneaten eggs and oatmeal away, paid the bill, and had no idea what I was going to do next. Emotions were running high. First, I was disappointed in my wife's infidelity. Second, and quickly growing, was a sense of revenge. Clayton Brenner had made the mistake of calling my wife. He was a slick talker and a devious asshole. The mere thought of him invading the sanctity of my marriage infuriated me. A woman never forgets her first lover, and since Clayton was handsome and rich, it made things that much harder. Getting back at his wife was another matter. I knew what Clayton was doing. I wasn't sure what Cassie did. Spirit and intent meant a lot to me. If she did something, what was her motivation and what was she accomplishing? I didn't feel like I could judge her until I knew more. Then again, I really didn't want to know more. I wheeled aimlessly around the city for hours until it was time to go to work. Eventually, I convinced myself that I didn't want to know what Cassie did or didn't do. Knowing either way would affect our marriage, possibly destroy it. I was determined not to let her explain her actions, no matter how hard she tried, if she tried at all. I was tired and depressed. I didn't want to go to work, or anywhere else for that matter. Cassie was already awake. I was sure by now she had found her bra and panties on the dressing table. I tried to visualize what was going on in her head, but I couldn't. There was too much going on in my head to think about what she was thinking about. Now she knows that I realized something was wrong. I couldn't concentrate on my work at the office. Around 10 o'clock, the phone rang. "John, it's Cassie." "Yeah." There was a short pause on the other end of the line. "I'm going to visit my mother for a few days. Are you okay?" "How long is a few days?" "About a week. Is that okay?" "Sure. Call me when you're ready to come home." "Okay. Thank you." Another short pause followed. "John, I love you." I didn't answer. I quietly hung up the phone, sat down in my office, and cried quietly, for the first time in years. I spent the rest of the week on vacation, taking advantage of my accumulated sick leave. I knew I was going to do something stupid, but I didn't know what yet. The most likely scenario I could think of was that Cassie went to see Clayton at the motel restaurant and then went to his room and had sex with him, just like old times. When she got home, she felt guilty and tried to somehow confess what she had done to me. She waited until we went to bed so I could take her confession a little better. The deed was already done, and she was trying to get some left-handed approval from me to justify or make up for her transgression. I hadn't given her any slack, and now she had a real problem. She knew she wasn't being completely truthful, and she had no idea what to do next. Of course, I could be wrong. When I got home, I found the black underwear in the trash can in the garage. I spent the next 2 days making myself even more miserable. I stayed in the house and played these mind games over and over again. I felt that Cassie and I had a special relationship, and I wanted more than anything to keep it. Any confession on her part would destroy the trust between us. Any questioning on my part would do the same. We were trapped. I was sure she would want to confess everything to get rid of the guilt, and that she was willing to face the consequences that would follow. I didn't want her confession anymore because I felt it would ruin our marriage. Cassie had a poor judgment of the whole situation. Was she now a cheater, an adulterer, or just a housewife who had screwed up and regretted it? What was Clayton? He was a skirt hunter who went after married women he felt were the right thing to do. He called me at home, my sanctuary, to seduce my wife. It was pretty easy to see where my aggression should be directed. I intended to solve part of my problem the next day, and I didn't care what the consequences were. It wasn't hard to find out what room Clayton was in. I decided it was best to take the simple approach. I'd knock on his door, and when he opened it, I'd shoot the asshole. At this point, I didn't care if I got caught or not. I wasn't going to make a big show of it, and I thought a low profile, inside and out, wouldn't be noticed. I opted for a .22 caliber Ruger. I figured 3 hollow points in my heart and 1 in my head would do the trick. I'm not a big gun enthusiast. I can't remember the last time I used or even cleaned my guns. I've owned a few, a shotgun, a hunting rifle, a .38 caliber pistol, and my Ruger. The problem today was that I couldn't find the Ruger. I tried to think of where I had put it or loaned it to someone, but I couldn't remember. In the end, I just grabbed the Smith Wesson and rushed to the Deska Inn. Well, the next step in my plan didn't work out as well. When I arrived at the motel, I found the place crowded with police cars. I shoved my gun under the seat and got out of the car. I nonchalantly walked toward one of the police officers. They were escorting the lady from Clayton's suite. She had a blanket slung over her shoulder, and a female officer had her arm around her shoulders. I was afraid to look. As they got closer, I recognized the woman. It was Susan Bradford, an acquaintance of ours. She and her husband Barry graduated from high school with us. They had moved to Reading so Barry could open a car dealership. It was sad to see Susan, but I was glad it wasn't Cassie. Susan was also one of Clayton's old standbys. As they were putting her in the car, I heard one of the cops say, "No, she locked herself in the bathroom. We had a hell of a time getting her to come out. The shot must have come from a .22 Ruger. Soon they were carrying Clayton out in a body bag. I can't say I was too upset, but I was looking forward to sending him there myself. Oh well. There are days when things go wrong. On the way home, I bought a pizza and a 6-pack of beer. I spent the rest of the week catching up on yard work and fixing some things around the house. I didn't feel like going back to work, and now that my fun with Clayton had been thwarted, I felt a depression sweeping over me. I kept the issue of the newspaper with the story of Clayton's death. The police had no evidence and no witnesses. When Cassie got home, the house was clean and dinner was modestly laid out. It was a cool homecoming, just modest smiles and a kiss on the cheek. We ate dinner and chatted about how her mom and dad were doing. We were both very careful not to talk about anything controversial. I washed the dishes and brought her a cup of Earl Grey. She sat quietly, just looking at her fingers resting in her lap. She slowly raised her head. "John, I need to explain to you that—" "Cassie, I'd rather not right now, please. Maybe another time we can talk about it. I've had a rough week and I'm really not ready." "But? Please listen to me. Have a nice tea party." There was an awkward silence. I picked up the paper with the article on Clayton and held it out to her. She looked at me and silently read the paper. She put the paper aside and looked at me again, waiting for some sign of approval. I remained silent. "I think I'll take a shower and go to bed early. I'm a little tired from the trip. I haven't been sleeping well lately. I'll sleep on the couch. Good night." "Good night, John." I watched her walk up the stairs as I carried the cups into the kitchen. It looked like it was going to take a while before things got back to normal. 2 weeks later, I went back to the bedroom. After about 6 weeks, we started having sex again. It was 4 months before our relationship was close to normal. It would never be the same again. But we were close. We no longer had late-night conversations. We never discussed the episode with Clayton. Cassie got pregnant. We were both happy. With a baby, we needed a new car. A station wagon, of course. I stopped by Barry Bradford's. He was in the process of divorcing Susan and wasn't shy about discussing it. Too bad she locked herself in the bathroom and couldn't identify the shooter, I remarked. Ruger's sound is muffled, but still she couldn't help but hear the shots. Barry looked at me strangely. I was trying to figure out what I had said wrong. Our conversation up to this point had been open and frank, and I thought I had tripped over my own tongue. John, not one newspaper article or TV program mentioned that she was locked in the bathroom. Well, I must have seen it somewhere. I didn't want to tell him I was at the crime scene. I have all the clippings and all the information about what happened, and it wasn't covered anywhere. And the fact that it was fired from a .22 Ruger was never mentioned anywhere either. The police kept that information secret in the interest of the investigation. I don't remember, but I must have heard it somewhere. Barry stared at me for a long time, saying nothing. He knew Cassie had fallen victim to Clayton's charms, too. Everyone knew all the girls Clayton had slept with because he bragged about each one. A wide smile appeared on Barry's face. John, I'm going to give you the best deal on the best station wagon in this parking lot. Let's go pick one out. I assumed that Barry had come to a certain conclusion about where I got my information that Susan was in the bathroom. He was wrong, but I saw no point in correcting him. Barry eventually got his own Ford dealership, and I got big discounts on a new car every 2 years for the rest of my life. Cassie and I have 2 beautiful daughters. Our marriage continued to grow strong despite one setback. When we attended social functions, Cassie always made sure to stay close to me. If at any point during the event some hopeful guy was hitting on her, she would come over to me, take my hand, and whisper in my ear, "It's time." I always knew what that meant. It happened a lot because Cassie was turning into a real vamp woman. She was aging well. Some of our regular hosts knew about this little quirk of hers and started reacting to it too. The 20th class reunion came and we drove to Lancaster. It was like any other reunion with lots of handshakes. Things were going pretty well and we were having a good time. As the evening was coming to an end, a well-dressed, well-groomed lady approached the table. It was Janet Brenner, Clayton's widow. She approached us, held out her hand, and asked us to dance. I looked at Cassie and she nodded that it was okay. It was a slow dance and I tried really hard not to do anything inappropriate. The song ended and we were left standing on the dance floor. She was facing me and holding both of my hands. Clayton had an electronic notebook. When the police returned his stuff to me, the book was on. I don't know why they didn't keep it or at least read it. I read the entire book several times and then destroyed it. I have been waiting for this opportunity to personally thank you for making my last 12 years absolutely wonderful. My new husband is the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me, and without you, it would never have been possible. I knew what she meant, and I didn't have the heart to tell her she was wrong. I figured I would lose nothing if I let her believe my fantasies. I kept my best impassive face and let her talk. I don't know exactly what was in his book, but she seemed to be able to piece it all together and decided that I was the one who set her free. She leaned over to me and kissed me gently on the cheek. I looked back and saw Cassie watching intently. I walked Janet to her seat, and a large, menacing man stood up. "John, this is my husband, Harold Stanton. Harold, I'd like you to meet John Wagner." "John, how nice to finally meet you. Janet and I appreciate everything you've done for us." I thought my hand was going to turn blue because he was squeezing it so hard. "Right. I'm glad to see things have worked out so well for you guys. I hope you have many good years together." It was stupid as hell, but I was at a loss. I smiled and nodded my head slightly. As I walked back to my table, I noticed Cassie sitting with her head down, rubbing her fingers over her knees. She did that when she was nervous. When I sat down, she started talking. I put my index finger and thumb together and slowly ran them over my lips. She smiled softly at me and didn't say anything else. We were both tired and reading was about 2 hours away. There was a little talk about what had happened during the evening, but nothing about Janet. We got home, checked on the kids, and headed to bed. I turned out the light, giving her a quick peck on the cheek. Everything was quiet, but I knew she was awake. John? John? Yeah? What did Janet tell you? Janet told me that she and her new husband are very happy and that I should thank you on her behalf. I lied. It was very quiet in the dark bedroom. Cassie lay very still and quiet. I couldn't even hear her breathing. Cassie? Cassie? Yeah? What did you do with my Ruger? Good night, John. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.